Welcome, everybody, to It Tastes Different Gaming News. What's on the news today? Callisto Protocol is now canceled in Japan. All right, before we jump in, make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit those notifications and all that good stuff, and let's dive in. The Callisto Protocol has officially been canceled in Japan due to its violent content. You heard it here, violent content. The CERO, which is the equivalent of the ESRB here in the States, would not agree to rate the game due to apparent violent content. We're talking about Japan. Okay. I mean, these are the people that make Godzilla, so they know violence. The CERO and the developers could not come to an agreement, and the developer of the Callisto Protocol would not make the requested changes to the content of the game because it would go against their vision. I don't know. I have some issues with the way this is happening because it's just me. So let's dive into it with Pat. Pat, you know about Japanese violence.
And for sure it was violence, because I thought I'd read earlier that it was like gore and
it's the gore from the violence. Okay. I mean, you can't have gore without violence unless it's Al Gore.
It is an odd thing, right? Japan has nothing against nudity or sexual expression typically. You know, there is some overboard stuff, but they typically don't have anything against that, but they do against violence and other stuff too, right? You know, Japan has banned stuff or had video game developers, I should say, modify stuff because of things in their games. Like they made Fallout modify the Fat Man gun launcher because it resembled, you know, the nuclear bomb that was dropped there. And they changed the nuke launcher and stuff like that. I think they had something to do with Crash Bandicoot, death getting changed, all kinds of stuff. You know, there's a plethora list of video games that have been changed because of not just Japan. You know, other countries do ban video games too, but Japan has a list of popular video games. I mean, there's been changes to Resident Evil 4, Call of Duty Black Ops, Bulletstorm, Gears of War 3, all kinds of stuff because they were violent or, you know, they had to be heavily edited to get rid of some stuff in the game that they didn't like. I think didn't they ban like the most recent version of Mortal Kombat as well? I think for violence. I mean, Mortal Kombat's a violent game, but I don't know. I don't think it's that bad. I mean, I know people who let their kids play that. I wouldn't let my kid play it at a young age, but you know, if they're 14, 15, whatever, you know, it's just an interesting concept to ban a video game due to violence. I don't really see the reason behind that. I mean, it's violence. Okay. You rate the game to where only people with a certain age group can get their hands on it. But it's violence and gore, right? Whatever. I never really thought of Japan as a very censored country, but I guess the more I look into it, they are pretty heavily censored in things. That's probably why why sexualization is highly out in your face with their like mangas and their games and stuff like that. Is they're just repressed, maybe. I don't know. It's just an odd thing. You suppress violence and gore, but you don't suppress the sexuality, the very sexual things that come out of that country. I mean, they have whole genres of anime and manga and cartoons named after the different sexualities that Japan has basically invented due to their fetishes and things like that. So violence is an odd thing. Are they afraid that it's going to make people who play them more violent? What's Japan's reasoning behind saying it's a violent video game? What is the tipping point, right? How much violence is too much violence for Japan? And how much gore is too much gore? Is it realistic? Or if maybe I tend to be purple or green, does that change the blood? You know, the blood and gore, does that change it? Or maybe it has to do with realistic, violence and blood and gore. For that, I don't know. I'd like to know some of these details, but it's not always widely published, because if they publish what makes a video game too violent or too realistic, then when a company toes that line and doesn't quite cross it, and Japan decides to, or any other country decides to ban it, that entity can say, hey, this is your line. I'm on the good side of your line. I didn't cross your line. So they don't really publish stuff like that. They just will arbitrarily decide what's too much, what's, I don't know. Nick, what do you think, man? What do you think about this reasoning behind why they're banning this right now?
I mean, every place has a ratings board, the CERO for Japan, and we have the ESRB, and then, Europe has the PEGI rating board. So they all have their different reasonings for banning something. ESRB here in the United States, we're pretty open to pretty much, come on in. Yeah, you make money. Great. You're approved, stamp. And then that guy that's just in the room, just stamping each one that's coming through. That's pretty much how ours goes. But, and other places just have stricter rules for how they should act. Right. I don't know, I guess what is the line that Japan has for their ratings boards? I don't know if it's the amount of gore or the type of gore that's in a game or something like that. I'm sure there's something. The Callisto Protocol seems like a gory game, much like it's kind of a successor to Dead Space. Dead Space alone was a pretty gory game for back in the day, right? Now it's a little amateur, but back in the day it was definitely gory. It's still a fun game. I mean, just on the level of gore and stuff, we have games nowadays that really far exceed what Dead Space did back in the day. So I think Callisto Protocol's maybe trying to head in that space of kind of one-upping, that gore and violence factor. And, the CERO just couldn't just say, no, we're not going to approve it. And the people behind the Callisto Protocol said, basically, we're not going to change the game. If you're not going to take it how it is, then you don't get it, pretty much, which sucks for the people in Japan that wanted to play the game. They did say that, they hope that everybody in Japan understands, and they, and any of those that they pre-order the game, they will get a refund for it. So that's good. They'll just get refunded for it. I mean, it sucks, but they could always import it if they really wanted to play it, because, all the Xboxes and PlayStations are region free. So they could just import it. It would be in English, so they may not be able to, maybe, unless they know the language, they may not be able to understand it. But, you have devices nowadays that can translate somewhat, for games like that and everything. So
there'll be a mod out for PC.
Oh, yeah.
Japanese language
sure.
pack.
Yeah, for sure. And then those people can just play it on PC and put that mod on. So yeah, I mean, who knows what reasonings behind it? That's what we have the ratings boards for, right? To put out the ratings and to approve or deny projects that come through. And if they deny them, that's kind of up to them. And it's kind of up to the developer if they want to change those things, like many of the developers you talked about, Pat, that have made changes in the past, or if they want to stay true to the vision that they've created, right? In this case, Callisto Protocol wants to stay true to what they've created, and so they're not budging on any sort of ratings. If it doesn't get approved, it doesn't get approved. Whereas other game developers say, okay, yeah, we can make these changes just to get approved. I'm surprised, really, that they didn't do something for Japan, or maybe just say like, yeah, we can, but it will be like later on. Maybe delay the release in Japan. That's been done before, right? We talked about this is China, but we talk about Diablo Immortal. It got pushed because of in its release in China for I can't remember what it was for, but for something that they had to change and alter in it. Well, they released everywhere else, and then a couple months later or whatever, it came out in China. So they could do that, and they might still do that, right? For right now, they're kind of holding strong, but they might be like, well, we're going to miss out on those sales. Maybe we will alter and change it. But it sounds like at the moment they're pretty much steadfast, staying strong with what their vision is and holding to that at the moment. So it is what it is. What do you think, Shane?
It's interesting. This just looking through Reddit a little bit. Apparently, the CERO wasn't established until 2002, so it's a fairly new entity. And just some of the stuff I was reading, they're very bouncy. They could find this offensive, but this thing not. Certain games that aren't banned for the same reasons other games are banned. One of them they were talking about in there was Resident Evil, and parts of 7 were banned, but not 8. Now 7 is a bit more suspenseful than 8. Maybe that's why, but I didn't see anything really in detail. So, but a game like this, it's all about the gore and all about the violence and the creep factor. I mean, I don't know if there was anything specific called out, saying, hey, if you would just tone this down, you're good to go, or if it was just the overall game. I mean, Nintendo used to not allow blood on their system unless it was green or blue or something. Luckily they pulled their heads out of their butts on that. But I wish they were a little more detailed about what it was, because speculating that it's just violence and gore and blood and all that, that's what this game is. So I wonder if it was specific or if it was just the whole thing of the game, because depending on what they wanted them to change, they just couldn't do it. I mean, if you change the gore out of the game and swap it out for green blood, you're not making the game you want. I mean, you're making a freaking cartoon. So I wish they did get a little more specific, but all we got is speculation. But it's weird that Japan, like Pat was pointing out, is anal retentive about some things, and other things it's like, oh my God, everything goes. Tentacle porn, Saturday morning cartoon that's on your breakfast cereal. You could probably see that anywhere you go, but you can't see gore from it. You can see tentacle porn, but not gore tentacle porn. So it's just a weird thing that they're doing here. Some of their decisions on games that they want banned or changed or whatever kind of fluctuate. I wonder if it's just a financial thing. A little more money my way gets the game lower rating. But they gave Mario Odyssey a B because there's this part of the game where he's on the beach. He won't have a shirt on. He has nipples. So they gave it a B something, at least according to this Reddit user. So, okay. It's not like it was Princess Peach or Yoshi out there with a shirt off and nipples showing. So I don't know. I wish we had a little more information, but it really sucks that people are going to be missing out on this game, because I know this group, even Pat, who is not a horror game guy at all, even he's kind of excited for it. So
I want to play it because you guys are going to play it, but let's talk about CERO, Computer Entertainment Rating Organization out there in Japan. Their ratings are pretty simplistic. They're not as kind of, what I mean by simplistic, I think they have less categories than we do. They have A, which is like the lowest you can get, which is basically our everyone, which is a CERO A rating, which basically means that it's subject to, there's no age limitation in this game. They have B, which Shane mentioned, which is 12 and up. So we have like E10 and things like that. They have B, which B just basically means suitable for 12 years old and up. And then they have C, which is 15 and up, D, which is 17 up, and then Z, which is 18 and up only. And then they have like an educational one, a regulations compatible one, and then they have a rating to be scheduled one. So basically it's A, B, C, D, and Z that you really worry about in their rating system, and that seems very simplistic and very straight and granular. But yeah, they have to have a certain set of internal credentialing. You have to, because you can't leave it up to the inspector, right, to rate your game, because what I might find offensive is not offensive to Shane or Nick, and something they may find offensive may not be offensive to me, so there has to be some internal. And for the Callisto Protocol developer to not say anything, it almost seems like it may be a big change they're asking them for, because not releasing your product in Japan versus China is one thing. It's 127 million population versus like a $1.4 billion population. The chance of loss of money to a Chinese market is much greater of a risk than losing it to a Japanese market in the eyes of a developer, right? So, rather than delay it or make a certain regional version of the game, they've just decided not to release it all in Japan, it sounds like, for now. I mean, that could change, right? They could be like, okay, we're done. Let's fix this for the Japanese market. But without, we don't know. Maybe it is a major change in the game. They're like, hey, you can't, this is just too realistic, too violent. Maybe they told them it's too close to something else historically in their country. And they're like, no, you can't do that. Just like I said, they made Fallout. If Fallout wanted to release their game, they had to get rid of the Fat Man, nuclear weapon, because it's culturally insensitive to them, over there. So every country's different, certain countries have different, different views on everything. Like you can go over to a European country and nudity is just the normal thing. You come over here to the United States and it's like, you cover that up. We're all about cover up and modesty. And then you go over to another country and they're like, whatever, over here in the US, people are afraid of seeing women's breasts, in public, but you go over to other countries and it's just part of a normal society in life. It's just
I'm
where
not
you're
afraid.
raised.
I welcome it.
Right.
That out there.
And it changes. Societies change based on regime changes and historical changes and things like that. So it's an ever changing world out there, even though CERO was only founded in 2002. That's 20 years ago. They've been in operations for 20 years. So that's a good length of time. I mean, our ESRB is self-regulated. It's not government regulated, so the gaming industry over here decided a long time ago that we would rather self-regulate than have the U.S. government put their fingers in it, because the U.S. government is everything they put their fingers in turns to shit, so it's either over-regulated, overpriced, over something. The government in this country is not good for business. It's like they're in the government should be in the business for people, not in the business of business. So anytime they try to put their hands in business, it is happening. And sometimes markets can't self-regulate. Like the video game industry almost ended up in the hands of the government, but then they banded together and said, we'll police ourselves until, I don't know, something happened. And almost in this country, a few things have almost happened to cause us to lose self-regulation. So our ESRB has only been in existence since 1994. So we've only got an 8-year head start on them. So, it's not that big of a deal, but video games haven't been, they've been around since we've all been born. So our lifetimes is basically a lifetime of video games. But before the 90s, video games were popular in arcades and not stuff that you can get in your house, for most people, I should say, not everybody. Some of us grew up with some of the older classic hardware and things like that. So,
well, I think one reason that the developers didn't release more direct information to why is hype. I mean, if you think about it, a game of this design, a game of this type, not telling you why Japan won't give it a rating really hypes it up, because that makes you think, oh yeah, this is going to be good. This is going to be nasty, gory, bloody, awesome, violent. That's the things my mind's thinking of. I mean, if Japan won't let it fly, it's got to be good. So, they're getting hype off of it. And I kind of want to play it even more now, honestly. I really want to know what the big deal is. Is it really that violent? Is it really that bloody? Is it really that gory? Is it that creepy? Is it all the things I want this game to be? Am I going to soil myself playing it? That's more of a hype now to me. So, but I guess we'll find out what 2, 3, 4 weeks, something like that. Or is it further out? I thought it was in October, but I can't remember. But
I don't know. It's I keep reading that it's based off gore, but I guess gore and violence are kind of hand in hand, right? You can't have typically you can't have one without the other. Some creature or something is eating or disemboweling or whatever, so there's blood and gore everywhere. You know, it's I don't know, man. I get. It's all secrecy, right? And it is whatever its reason is, whatever the CERO reasoning for getting rid of it or for not allowing it. I'm sure they've told the Callisto Protocol developers why. And as you mentioned, they could be using it for hype, or they could be using it to say, yeah, no, your market's not big enough to demand this big of a change to our game, and we don't even want to deal with it. So, time will tell, and people will be able to get copies outside of their country. I mean, that's what VPNs are for. That's what all of the stuff that people use to circumvent security protocols in place to keep region locked games out or in or things like that. So the people who really want to play it over there will get to play it. The problem is the developers will end up losing money on it because they're either going to pirate it or, something like that. They'll either pirate it, which the developer will lose all the money on it, or they'll be buying it online from somebody sharing keys or something, or using a VPN to purchase a different region version of the game. So whoever wants to play it will get to play it because that's the way it works. If I wanted to play a game that was only released in Japan, I'm going to use a VPN to spoof my region so it looks like I'm ordering in Japan or something like that.
Yeah, it's going to suck for some people, but well, I guess we're just going to have to wait and see what the hype is all about. What this game truly is about. So,
well, what's the game rated over here?
It's God, I just had it in my head. You guys Google it.
I would assume mature.
Yeah.
Yep, you are correct. It is rated as mature.
It comes out December 2nd, so it's a holiday treat.
Oh, nothing says Christmas
like blood and gore and guts
on your tree.
Yeah, I don't know, man. We only rated it as mature. Japan's like, get that crap out of here. We didn't even give it an adult only rating in this country, and Japan's like, nope, get that out of here. Get out of here. I can understand if we rate it as adult only, and because in my opinion, in this country, in the U.S., an adult only rating is a death sentence for most games, because you're not buying it off the shelf,
and you're definitely not getting it on a console.
I guess I need to look because I'm not sure how many adult-only games have come to consoles in the past.
I don't think on Steam have in the last 20.
Yes, it'll be on Steam.
I've seen Nick's library.
All right. Yeah, we'd have to look that up. I don't know what adult-rated only games are on console. So, yeah, that would be an interesting one to see over the years on where it came out as. Let's see what's some newest rating ones. Agony was an adult only games that receive but were not released with an AO rating. That was Agony. Agony was on the consoles and it eventually got adult only rating.
Yep, which means it ain't going to consoles.
It was on consoles. It was on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and the Switch.
Really? And I never knew they allowed that.
The game. Here we go. Cool. It got reduced. So a game originally given an AO rating was edited to meet the M rating. So any game that's given an A rating is basically a death sentence, in my opinion, for any type of revenue because you're not getting on.
That game was agony to play.
Was it? You played it? I didn't play it.
Yeah, I own it on Steam.
Did you get the pun?
It's not very good.
Well,